Okay, we're up to siman mem seif bet. First seif here, seif bet, is actually a very practical topic. It has to do with can you have marital relations in the same room as tefillin, sefer Torah, sefer kodesh. Okay, most people I would assume do not have a sefer Torah in the room, but tefillin, sefer kodesh certainly very common that somebody could have in their bedroom. If not at home, then maybe if they're going to a hotel or staying by somebody, it's not uncommon at all. So let's start with the Gemara first of all. So the Gemara says as follows: in other words, his son got married, but he was not able to have proper marital relations. So he was trying to find out what the problem is. We went to see what was going on. And he saw there was a sefer Torah in the bedroom. In other words, you placed the sefer Torah in the room with my son and his wife. You're causing him a sakana to him. So the Braita says if there's a room rather, that has sefer Torah and tefillin on it, it's usher to have relations in it until you remove it or put it in a kli within a kli. So this is the source for the famous halacha that you need a double keli. Amar Abaye lo shanu ela bekli sheino kelyan, but kli shu kelyan afilu 10 mana kechad iman adam. In other words, it only works with a kli betoch kli if the way the Rishon explained it as follows: that if the second kli, in other words, one of the two kelim, is a kli which is not designated for the tefillin or for the sefer Torah, but if it's if both kelim are just to hold the tefillin, let's say, even if you have 10 kelim, in other words, you put the tefillin in a bag, then you have another bag, and then another bag on top of it, even 10 bags, one within the other, but all these bags are designed just to hold the tefillin. That's all considered as if it's only one kli. So I can have the bag of the tefillin, but the second kli that it's in has to be a kli not designated specifically for the tefillin.
So this plastic cover nowadays is basically just to make sure that the real bag doesn't get dirty. And that's about it.
But since both of them, well, it depends. We'll see a discussion if it's a bag that holds both the talit and the tefillin. Can that be considered a second keli or not? So if you've got both the talit and the tefillin in, then we'll see a discussion on it. But let's say it's just the tefillin. So even if I have a first bag, a second bag, the plastic cover, it doesn't make it into a kli betoch kli. Here, explain that the kamatra is a box, right, where you hold the books inside, and then the glima is like a covering that you put on top of it. That's considered the kli betoch kli. Why? Even though the box is the designated for to hold the svarim or the sefer Torah or whatever it is, the glima that you put on top of it, that's not designated for that, and that's considered the good covering. The poskim are medayik something very important from this example in the Gemara, that we see that the second kli doesn't have to fully cover it, right? Because you have the box, which is obviously covering everything, both from the top, the bottom, and the sides. When you pour like a cloth on top of it, it's not covering it from the bottom. It's just going on top, maybe to the sides. And you see that's also considered the kli betoch kli. So you don't have to have, it's enough that something's on top of it. You don't have to have like a kli, that completely encompasses the tefillin. It continues the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, Sefer Torah tzarich la'asot lo mechitza asara. Okay, this is another option that you can do a mechitza in between you and the Sefer Torah. מרזות ראיק לבי רבשי, חזה לדוכתי דמר ברבשי, דמנח בי ספר תורה ועבד לי מחיצה. אמר לי כמן כרבי יהושע בן לוי, אמר דאמר רבי יהושע בן לוי דלית לבית האחרינה, מה ראית לבית האחרינה, אמר ללאו הדעתי. So he said he saw that he had a mechitza asara. So he said Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi only allowed to do a mechitza asara if you don't have another room. But if you have another room, you shouldn't do a mechitza asara. You should do the sefer Torah to another room. So he says, enachinami, I wasn't thinking about it. So from this Gemara, it's mashma. It's not mashma, it's actually explicit that to make a mechitza asara, if let's say you have a sefer Torah in the bedroom, to make a mechitza between you and the sefer Torah is only b'diavad if you don't have another room to place a sefer Torah in. If you have another room to place a sefer Torah in, you should take it out of the room. Okay, now there's a machloket rishonim here. What happens if I do a kli betoch kli by a sefer Torah? Should I still lechatchila take it out of the room, or a kli betoch kli is a heter even lechatchila? According to the Rambam, it's a heter even lechatchila. According to other rishonim, like Rabbeinu Yonah here, or whatever, they say that kli betoch kli is also b'diavad and should not use lechatchila by a sefer Torah. Okay, that appears in Hilchot Sefer Torah, but regarding that's a chumrah by Sefer Torah that you should lechatchila remove it from the room. But tefillin, that you can do a kli betoch kli. Okay. Now let's go to the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, because there's some. Then maybe we'll go back a little bit, but let's see the psak in the Shulchan Aruch, and there's some very important details in the Mishnah Brura. So he says as follows: the Mechaber says, "Bait sheyesh bo tefillin, אסור לשמש מיתתו עד שיוציאם או שיניחם בכלי בתוך כלי, והוא שאין השני מיוחד להם." You can have one כלי which is מיוחד to the tefillin, but the second one needs to be אינו מיוחד, שאם הוא מיוחד אפילו 100 חשובים כאחד. אגב, אם שניהם אינם מיוחדים להם, או שהפנים אינו מיוחד להם והחיצוני מיוחד להם, מותר. In other words, if both kelim are not מיוחד to the tefillin, that's fine. Okay, there is a Rabbeinu Yonah which is mashma not like that, but everybody says it cannot be, that's what he means, and they change the gears on Rabbeinu Yonah, so Lemaise, even if certainly if both kelim are not miyuchad to the tefillin, even better. But even if one of them is not miyuchad and the other is, that's fine, and it doesn't matter if it's the pnimi which is miyuchad and the chitzon is eino miyuchad, or if the pnimi is the eino miyuchad and the outer one is the miyuchad. It doesn't matter. In both cases, it would be permitted. So you could, like for example, take a bag and inside put the tefillin on that, and then put it inside your bag. And again, it's not a bag which is designed for the tefillin. It would be okay. All right, so this is regarding tefillin. What about other sifrei kodesh? Okay, so here the Mishnah Brura says, "V'hu adin chumashim o sidurei tefillot o shar sfarim bein bektiva ubedfus hakol yesh b'hem kedusha u'ba'inan kli betoch kli v'afilu en ktav meshita." In other words, which is not the ktav ashuri, even it's written in, let's say, ktav Rashi or some sort of other form of script, and even if it's printed, all of that needs kedusha. Okay, now everything that the Mishnah Brura here says, this is his psak, but there's a machloket on it. Because Sh'ar Sfarim, again, the Gemara only said tefillin and sefer Torah. Sh'ar Sfarim is not so clear. Okay, many Rishonim do say that it applies to other books, but for example, I think it's the Meiri. He quotes here, "Usfarim shelanu yesh mekilim bahem, yesh machmirim." Okay, in other words, our books, there's a machloket whether this halacha applies to. Okay, so that's one point. Second point in the Mishnah Brura is that it says it applies also to print. That also print has dusha. This too, not everybody agrees to. Why? He himself says later on, he says, "Ayen beyor edei Bataz shekatav kol hamakel b'kedushat sfarim hanitpasim matin lited atadin detvusa v'ikmo ktiba." Bataz writes, "What does it matter if I write or if I print?" Again, the old print was just that I took I don't know how you call it, the glufa, the print, that you dip it in ink and then you stamp it on the paper. Okay, he says, "Ach b'tshuvat Chavot Yair nokel lakel b'ze b'shat adchak she'en lo b'ma l'chasot." The Chavot Yair was lenient. Why? He says, since the print is done by goyim, or it was often done by goyim in those times, that's why it doesn't have kedusha. Okay, contemporary poskim also debate. They say even if print fundamentally have kedusha, maybe the way modern printing is done, that there is not really a person that's physically printing the svarim, right? You push a button on a computer and then it operates the machinery and prints the books. Maybe that doesn't have kedusha at all. So they paskin lechatchila that it does have kedusha, but there is a bit of a suffix whether it applies to contemporary printed books. Now, here the Mishnah Brura has another chumrah that he says, "Krichat hasefer eina nachshevet lekisui. V'hiu meguf hasefer u'ba'inan shnei kisuyim." In other words, the book cover, I already have one cover in the book cover. So he says, no, the book cover is like considered part of the book, so it's not even considered the kli at all, and I need two coverings besides the book cover. Okay, this too is not so pashut. Why? First of all, I found that the Meiri says opposite from the Mishnah Berurah. Here, this is the Meiri on the sugya there. He says, "Usfarim shemechusim beorot atfurim bahem, oto kisui ole lo le'echad, v'im natan alehem beged dayo." Right. So he says, if I have again, they didn't have books like the way we have nowadays, but apparently they did have some sort of leather that they would sew together to the plaf, whatever it is that they were writing on, and they would use that to cover. And he says that is considered a covering, and even though it's attached permanently to the book, he says it is considered a cover, so I only need one other cover besides that. Okay, I found in the Piskei Teshuvot as well. It says, ועוד מצינו הפוסקים לעניין כריכת ספר אם נחשב לכיסוי אחד או לאו. In other words, that some say, he quotes here the Meiri, he also quotes some other achronim that say as well. And he says, עוד מצינו, he said, וכיוון שיש עוד צדדים להקל במזוזה וכן בספרים הנתפסים, יש להורות להקל בזה והמחמיר את הלא אהב הברכה. In other words, so the kula that comes out based on this is that, let's say I have Sifrei Kodesh in the room, so it would be enough to just put one covering on top of them. Okay, why? Because first of all, there's a safek whether they even require a kli b'toch kli, right? Whether Sfarim in general require kli b'toch kli. Even if you say Sfarim in general require kli b'toch kli, it could be that the printed ones do not have kedusha. Even if you say the printed ones have kedusha, according to Lechara the Meiri and possibly some other poskim, the book cover itself is considered one kli. So if I do one covering on top of them, then that's fine. So I mean, Lechara from the Mishnah Berurah comes out to be machmir on that. Lechara, there's room to be lenient on that. Okay, so again, if you have a whole library in the room that you're sleeping in, obviously it's going to be difficult to cover everything. But let's say sometimes you just have a few svarim with you, so you just take some sort of cloth or something, take a jacket or something, to put it on top of them, and that would be considered a kli b'toch kli. You can rely on that. What about tefillin? So here the Mishnah Berurah discusses that later on. He says, "Lav dafka kelim, du adin shnei kisuim. V'im piresh talit או שאר כיסוי על הכיס של תפילין, אף על פי שהכיסוי אינו מכסה רק מלמעלה או מן הצדדים ולא למטה, אפילו הכי שרי." In other words, even if it's just covering just on top in the sides and it's not underneath, that's fine. What about the big bag which holds both the tefillin and the talit? He says, "ואותם המניחים כיס התפילין והטלית לתוך כיס גדול, הרי גם הכיס הגדול נקרא כליין המיוחד להם. וצריך עוד כיסוי על גבן, אם לא שמכסה בטלית על התפילין בתוך הכיס, דאז שרי דטלית אינו ככליין." He says the bigger bag which holds both the talit and the tefillin is not considered the second kli, but the talit itself, if you take the talit and you sort of open it up a bit and use it to cover the tefillin, that would be considered the second kli. Okay, here in the Bir Halacha, he says that that's the opinion of the Magen Avraham, but the Eli Rabbah is lenient that the second bag, which holds both the talit and the tefillin, is not considered something which is miyuchad for the tefillin, but rather it is considered a second bag. So according to that opinion, if you have the bigger bag which holds both the talit and the tefillin, already you have a kli b'toch kli. Again, the Mishnah Berurah is machmir on that, but he said what you could do very simply is just take the talit and sort of wrap it, make it go over the tefillin, and then also you have a kli b'toch kli, and that's fine, because the talit itself is definitely can be considered the second kli, which is eina the kli to cover the tefillin. Okay, another kula that he brings here, he says here, quotes later on, well, if you have a mezuzah, which is on, let's say when you close the door and the mezuzah is inside, like the door is sort of reversed from the way it usually is, and you also need to cover that mezuzah in the bedroom, so you need a kli b'toch kli for that, so you need like something to put on top of the mezuzah to cover it. But he quotes here a kula from the Chayei Adam. He says, כתב בחוכמת אדם, נראה לי, דין במזוזה או שאר ספרים, אם עשה מתחילה בית כלים שיחשב אחד לכלי בתוך כלי, כגון שכרך מזוזה בנייר ואחר כך היא נקרא בתיק של המותר, כיוון שבתחילה כיוון לכך. In other words, not everybody agrees with this, but the kula of the Chachmat Adam is that if lechatchila you made a double kli for the purpose that it will be considered a double kli, that is considered okay. Why? He says because all the Gemara said that a kli betoch kli doesn't work if it's all for the thing, is if it's really that the second kli is just part of this, same safeguarding of the object. Let's say I didn't need two kelim. One cover would have been enough, but I did a second covering just to make it be considered a kli betoch kli. Then he also says that also works. Okay, so all of that is on. That's all if you want to have, again, as we said, marital relations in the same room as tefillin or sifrei kodesh. Let's see, סעיף ג' אפילו להניח, I'm just reading the שולחן ערוך, אפילו להניח בכלי תוך כלי, אסור להניחם תחת מרגלותיו. Right, let's say I put the tefillin in a kli betoch kli, but I want, I'm afraid that I don't want somebody to take them. So I want to put them under my feet when I go to sleep. So that's prohibited. Why? Because to put it under your feet, that's considered like a derech bizayon. It's disrespectful to the tefillin. You cannot put it under your head. In other words, where your head is laying, or under your pillow. Okay, where your head is. Again, this is not because of the wife with you. It's not because of even if I have a kli betoch kli, because again, to put your head on it, to lay your head on the tefillin, even if it's through a pillow, that's considered disrespectful. Okay. אבל שלא כנגד ראשו, אם אין אשתו עמו מותר. ואם אשתו עמו צריך כלי בתוך כלי. But if I want to put it under my pillow, not against my head, so that is permitted to do if my wife is not with me, even without a kli betoch kli. If the wife is with you, then again you need a kli betoch kli. Okay, the Gemara explains the reason that they would do this is netiruta, right? In other words, they wanted to protect the tefillin. So, what better way to put it if you're going to sleep than to put it by your head. Okay, here the Gemara says, in other words, that according to Shmuel, it's mutter to put it by your head. My time in other words, since it's more protective of the tefillin to have them by your head, that's better. But again, don't put it directly under your head, but it could be under your pillow to the side. Okay, this is also in the army. This is what they tell you to do with the rifle. You have to sleep it with the rifle under your pillow so that nobody will be able to steal the rifle from you when you're asleep. So you can't do it with the tefillin, not right under your head, but under the pillow to the side. Okay, there are all kinds of details here. Whether I always need the kli betoch kli. The Mechaber says, no, I only need the kli betoch kli if it's your wife with you. Otherwise, you don't need the kli betoch kli. And there's also a question whether the pillow itself can count as a kli. The Rambam says the pillow does not count as a kli. Other Rishonim say the pillow does count as a kli. That's what the Mishnah Berurah says. He says, or you can put it, so he rules that even two pillows is okay, but he says at the end, the only reason לא התירו חכמים להניח תפילין תחת מראשותיו כשאשתו עמו אפילו בכלי בתוך כלי, אלא כדי שישתמרו מן הגנבים והעכברים, from the thieves and the mice, ולפיכך אם יש לו מקום אחר שמשתרים שם, לא ינחם כלל במיטה. So if you have a better place to put it, that it will be safe, better not to put it in bed with you. Okay, hey, ד', sorry, אשתו במיטה ואינו רוצה לשמש מקרה אין אשתו עמו. Again, the Rishonim speak about whether the wife is with you or not, but the Beit Yosef says, that what does it mean the wife is with you? The wife is with you is only relevant if you plan to have relations with her, because if you have relations with her, that's when I need the kli betoch kli. But let's say you're sleeping with your wife, but you have no intent of having relations with her, then you don't need the kli betoch kli. להניחם במיטה כנגד צידו דינו כתחת מרגלותיו. To put it on the bed, but to your side, that's like putting it by your legs. This is the Rabbeinu Yonah. He says that there's a problem. If you put it by your head, it's not likely that you'll roll over it. But if you put it to your side, since often people shift during the night and they roll over, there is a chashash you roll over the tefillin. That's why you should not put it by your side on your bed. Okay. Seif Vav. See if there's anything in the Mishnah. Here, the Mishnah Berurah here quotes a Taz אוסר להיות אשתו עמו במיטה שיניח תפילין כלי בתוך כלי שמא ישכח וישמש. The Taz says, even if you're not planning on having marital relations, since you might change your mind and you will have relations with her, then lechatchila you should put the tefillin in the kli betoch kli in case you forget. Hey, here he brings actually a practical case. ספסלים שבבית הכנסת, שתחת הספסלים יש תיבה להצניע שם טלית ותפילין. Right, this is in some shuls. I haven't seen it so much recently, but in older shuls, I think I've seen it, that they have under the chair, like a box. Sometimes it's like another shelf under the chair, or it could be that when you raise the chair itself, there's like a box underneath that you can put like books in or your tefillin inside. יש אומרים דאסור להישב על הספסלים, ויש מתירין. In other words, am I, by sitting on the box, is it like that I'm putting the tefillin under my feet or something like that and disrespecting it? So he says there's a מחלוקת on it. אבל כשיש חלל טפח בתיבה פנוי, מותר ודאי לשב על התפילין. ובעל נפש ראוי לו להחמיר מאוד שלא במקום הדחק, גם בזה, כי תפילין יש להיזהר בקדושתן מאוד, ואם קבעו במסמרים לכותל, מותר להישב על הספסל. So if it's like really attached to the wall, then it's like, okay, it's a shelf. It's not considered that you're sitting on what's beneath. But if it's just like a detached chair, and it has that box underneath, so then it's like you're sitting on the tefillin. So he says, lechatchila, better to avoid it, unless I have a halal tefach. In other words, if I have a space of a tefach, 8 centimeters above the tefillin, then it's permitted, because if it's like a halal tefach, then it's like a ohel, so that like makes it separate. Okay. I remember in America when I was growing up, the show had the like under the chairs there was like a shelf, and that's where people kept their tefillin. I don't know how common that is though. No. Okay, let's just see quickly, try to finish the siman. שכח ושימש מיטתו בתפילין, לא יאחז לא בבתים ולא ברצועות עד שייטול ידיו, מפני שידיים עסקניות הם, ושמא נגעו במקום התינופת. Okay, hard to imagine this happening, but if somebody had relations while he was still wearing tefillin, so he should first wash his hands before touching the tefillin, whether it's the bait or the retzuot, since he likely touched intimate parts, then the hands are not considered to be clean, so he should wash before touching the tefillin. ישן בהם וראה קרי, לא יאחז בבתים אלא יאחז ברצועה ומסיר אותם, הגד שיקנח הקרי מעליו וייטול ידיו. If he fell asleep with the tefillin, again, you're not allowed to sleep with tefillin. Let's say somebody fell asleep with tefillin on, and the carry came out. So here he should take off the tefillin, not holding them by the batim, but holding them by the tzua, to remove them. Why? Because now he's unclean for the carry. So that's why we don't want to delay him until he'll wash his hands, but rather we tell him immediately remove the tefillin, just hold it by the tzua, by the straps, and remove them, so as not to delay anymore. Okay, the final halacha, very interesting. Also, I think somewhat lemaise. He says, "Anichnas leseudat keva, choltzan umanichan al hashulchan ad zman bracha, v'chozer umanichan, aval achagat arayin tzarich lecholtzan." Okay, so this was in the times of Gemara that people wore tefillin all day. But let's say you're about to sit down for a meal. So the Gemara says you should take off the tefillin. Rashi says the reason is because during the seuda you might come to drink. If you come to drink, you'll come to kalut rosh and a sechadat. So you shouldn't have the tefillin on during the seuda, but you place the tefillin on your table. In other words, why? So that when it comes to birkat hamazon, you'll put the tefillin back on for the birkat hamazon. Okay, now there's a question for those that are bisman Gemara that they had mayim achronim, or for those that nowadays are also noheg mayim achronim, should you put on the tefillin before the mayim achronim or after the mayim achronim? The Rambam says you should put it on after the mayim achronim. The Mishnah Berurah here says, or where is it in the Be'er Halacha maybe? Yeah, he says maybe since we hold that you shouldn't speak between mayim achronim and birkat hamazon, you should put it on before before the Mayim Achronim. Again, the logic to put it on after the Mayim Achronim is that you want to be clean first. Okay. Now he says, if let's say I'm not eating a meal, I'm just grabbing a snack, then I can do that even with tefillin on. Now here the Mishnah Berurah says, בספר שולחן שלמה מסתפק, אפשר דזהו דווקא מי שמניחן כל היום, ולא מי שידרכו להניח בשעת קריאת שמע ותפילה. In other words, the logic of the Shulchan Shlomo that he's quoting here is as follows. Chazal permitted to eat achilat arai with tefillin. Why? Because it's difficult. They wore tefillin all day. If each time you just want to take a drink or have a small bite, you have to take off your tefillin, it creates a big tircha. Okay, so that's why they allowed achilat arai. But we anyways are only wearing tefillin for a brief time during davening. So why won't there's no need for us to do achilat arai with tefillin? So therefore he says you shouldn't be lenient about this and be machmir. I saw the Tzitz Eliezer, I brought here on the source pages, he says a very nice tshuva on this. He argues with this. I liked what he said. He said very nicely that even if in theory this Taina is right, that Chazal only allowed it because they wore tefillin all day, he says, Lemaise, once Chazal permitted it, we cannot come and answer it. Okay? He says, "דמה שלא גזרו חכמי הש"ס מחמת איזה טעם ועכשיו בטל הטעם מכל מקום אין בידינו לגזור." So he says, "למעשה Chazal didn't prohibit achilat arai, so it's permitted." Okay, so I think this is sometimes למעשה, sometimes somebody wears tefillin, and then after davening, whatever, he wants to sit down and learn a bit, with his tefillin on. So he wants to have maybe a coffee, maybe a small bite. So even though there's room to be machmir on this, mikar adin is permitted to have achilat arai with tefillin. Obviously, if it's a kiddush where you're going to I don't know, if somebody's doing some sort of kiddush after davening, during the week, and there's a l'chaim there, and there's going to be a lot of joking, and somebody might come to kalut rosh, then obviously it's not appropriate, and you should take your tefillin off besides that. But if it's done with making sure, maintaining not to come to kalut rosh, then nikar then it's mutter to have with tefillin on. All right, any questions or comments? Okay, very good. So we finished siman mem.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting.